Hey Alex, here we are on your website. I've opened up to one of your latest blog posts, and what I would like to do is just go through it, some things that I noticed you've been doing, and maybe talk about some best practices for you so that things look a little more uniform from an aesthetic point of view, but even more importantly, that things are working from an SEO point of view the way that we intended and would like them to. So here we are on this page that already exists. What I'm going to do is click here on edit. Okay, so you're already familiar with most of this stuff. So first thing I'm going to do is the aesthetic stuff. On this edit form, what we're looking at here is just basic text, and it doesn't have all the aesthetic stuff that we see when we get to here. Like when we put a heading 2 on the regular page, it looks all purple. But when we're looking at it in here, it just looks black and bold and bigger. Because this is just a default view. So some things I want to talk about here. When you're reading a book, paragraphs are usually put together so that there's no space between the paragraphs, and the first line in each paragraph is indented. And these are the kinds of things that we're used to from school and writing classes and reading books and magazines and newspapers and stuff like that. But the web works a lot differently, and the way that people read things on a screen, it's not as easy to read things on a screen as it is to read from paper. Which is why typically we don't see a lot of indented paragraphs on websites, and we also see paragraphs with a nice big space between them. This does a couple of things for people. Number one, it helps to break up the text so that when they come to your blog post, it doesn't look like a giant sea of text like they're going to be reading for days and days and days. When people are reading things online, especially blog posts, we want to make them nice tiny snippets with their own headings, so that they can kind of peruse through it and get through it quickly. It's a psychological thing where you want to make the blog post look like you can read this in 5 minutes. Just hurry up and read it. But if it's just long paragraphs of text, people are going to get daunted by it and most likely just move on without even reading or perusing through it. So that's why these H2 headings that I set up for you are really great. I would say in a thing like this, if we could have like 2 or 3 more in something this long, just from a visual standpoint, it's going to make the blog post look so much more reader friendly. You got to think people are looking at these things on their lunch hour. They're looking at them while they're sitting on their couch on their laptop or their tablet or something, and we just want this to be something that they can read really fast. So 2 things I would suggest is put spaces between paragraphs. The web is set up that way automatically. And number 2, try not to indent the paragraphs. The web is not made for indenting. And let me just show you something here. If I hit the source code, you're doing something where you're probably writing your content in another program and then copying and pasting it into here. So it's adding all of these extra div tags, and I don't know what these are or where they came from. I'm sure you didn't write these, but all they're doing is mucking up your source code and making it less attractive to something like Google. And another thing that's very unattractive is these pieces of code right here. We see NBSP, that stands for notebook space. So every time, the web is set up so that there's only one space allowed. You can't have space and then another space. So in order to put space, 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 space to indent this text all the way to here, it has to put a notebook space and then a regular space and then a notebook space, oops, and then a regular space. It's really ridiculously complicated. It adds a lot of code to your website. It slows the website down, and it makes it look unattractive from a coding point of view. And when Google sees unattractive code, it doesn't like it. So we really want to write this code in the most attractive way possible. Now Drupal is set up to write the most attractive code possible, but it will only write the code based on what you paste into it, which is really important to understand here. So when we come back to this thing, let's say I take this text, okay? See how it's all, the B and the P, they don't even line up. The indentations aren't even the same. See, the B comes to here, and if I come straight down the P, there's another space there, right? The indentations don't even line up. So, and there's no space between these paragraphs. So when I look at this page as a reader of your blog, all I see is a giant sea of text here, and I just go, whoa, that's too much. It's all over the place in the formatting. The B starts here, the C's here, the P's over here. I don't know if that's a paragraph or if that's just some weird spacing that you did. It's hard to tell because it's not a book. It's not printed. And the web is very different than the printed page. So we need to keep that in mind a little bit. So here's how I would have done it. Going back to edit, if you wrote this in Word, okay, I would suggest instead that you write this in something like this program here. I'm on a Mac, so I have text edit. But on a PC, you probably have something like Notepad or something like that. So if I paste that text into here and I make it plain text. When I write blog posts for my websites, I always write them in plain text. Now what plain text is just that, plain text. There's no bold, there's no italic, there's no headings, there's no nothing. It's just text. I'm going to get rid of all these extra spaces. Okay, I'm going to make the paragraphs look like paragraphs in just plain text. See how there's a space between the paragraphs here? Okay, now that it's plain text, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy it, I'm going to go back to the website, I'm going to delete all of this text, and then you want to come over here and do paste as plain text. Okay, so there's a weird space right here. I'm going to make that a new paragraph. And you're going to see that these are now their own little paragraphs. Now, if I highlight this, see how it says normal and there's a parentheses there? This is set as normal div because you had those div things in there before. I'm going to just make sure that it's just plain normal. Okay? And when I go to source, this div is still there from before. That was what was causing that. Now when I go to source, see how it's just a P tag and then the text. And then an end P tag. That means the end of the paragraph. A P tag and then the text and then the end of the paragraph. Okay? And when you look at the end of each paragraph, there's a nice space between paragraphs. Now, when I hit save, now the paragraphs are broken up and it's a little easier to read. It's also going to make sure that page by page by page in your website look and feel the same, that you have a constant look to all of the text. You don't have to set the font. The font is set automatically. Okay? Finally, if you're going to put this schedule an appointment thing, let's take a look at the code for that. I look at the source code for this. Here's the source code for, let's see, where is it? I have to find it because look at all of this. P, class, center style is in here. All of this stuff should not be in here. This is all code diarrhea. It's just a lot of extra code that's in here because it was set up in another program and then copy and pasted. It should be set up as plain old text and then the formatting gets done in the editor here on the website. If the formatting is done in Word, then it copies over all of this crap and it just clunks up your web page with all of this junk code that really isn't necessary because it should be, the styling and the font should all be set by the style sheet that I created for your website. So this should look like this instead. all of this text right here within this weird code. It should look like this. That's it, H4. And then this is the link. The link should have no style. The link style is set, again, by the style sheet. Request an appointment online, and we don't need the strong and span, and H4. Now let's take a look at that. Request an appointment online. See, and now it's just that simple code that is much more Google friendly than all of that junk which just worked to make your website code look unattractive to Google. Only because you're writing it in Word and pasting it in and copying over all of that junk code that we don't want and don't need. Same thing with schedule an appointment. Now, obviously, you're not going to look through the source, but I'm just showing you what the source looks like, okay? So here it is again, the P class, all of this code. This should be in H3. To schedule an appointment, please call this. End H3. See, that's it. Beautiful code. The H settings are already set in the style sheet, so we don't need all of that code to tell it what to do. It's already calling the style sheet, asking what to do. If I center it the way you had it, I hit center, hit save. And now it looks like this. Now, if you say you don't like it to be blue like that, I can change it. I can make an H5 and make it something else. But that's it. And then, so that you don't have to remember how to do that each time, if you're going to add this to the bottom of every blog post, then what we should do is just make it a block that is automatically appended to the bottom of every blog post, just like the share button is. You don't have to remember to add the share button. I set up a block. So if you're going to do something on every page, don't do it manually. Tell me, and I will set it up so that it's automatically there on every page and it's coded correctly. Okay, so that's aesthetic stuff. It's also SEO stuff because, like I said, the coding for these paragraphs is much cleaner than what you had, and the coding now for this is much cleaner than what you had, and Google will look upon that very favorably. And number two, just to recap, the paragraph setup here is so much more visually appealing to the casual reader. Unless your readers are all people who are just hardcore, I have to read every single word you write, which, no offense, but I doubt it. You have to make it more visually appealing so that you can entice them to take that couple of minutes to read this thing, or at least peruse through it and see if it's something that's important to their life. The addition of the picture is great because then when you go to Facebook, share, you can scroll through the pictures and find the one that goes with it. That is awesome. Definitely keep adding pictures to the to your blogs. I wouldn't suggest all caps. All caps on the web is kind of screaming. There's really no reason to scream. So also, it doesn't look all that great in your sidebar menus. It looks much better. It just, they stand out in a bad way, you know. There's no reason for it. So, without your permission, I'm going to make this lowercase. Okay, I was going to do one video, but this is a long video just for the aesthetic stuff. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to do the SEO stuff on a separate video. This way you can go back and forth to both and see the parts that you want to see.